the story of Basis Ladavar Asul, but first we will have our intro, where we announced that we are learning for the Menucha of Surname Dagur and Sur Mos Montefiore. We are once again in Eretz Chemda, in unit 37. Is that correct? 47, sorry. Unit 47. We were learning about Basis Ladavar Asul. What is a Basis Ladavar Asul? You have something that is Muktze that was intentionally placed on something that is not Muktze. In such a situation, the non-Muktze would also be considered halachically Muktze, even though it's not Muktze unto itself. So that's the basic definition. As we were learning, we were talking about in tandem about bitul kli mehechano. So you have an item that you're allowed to carry on Shabbat, and then you do something or you cause something to be done, and suddenly you can no longer carry that item on Shabbat. That would be a transgression of bitul kli mehechano, which is in a way destructive to the kli because now it cannot be used on Shabbat. It can be so that's the idea there. And we were learning about what the relationship between these two is, right? Is the idea that bitul kli mehechano is that bitul kli mehechano is something that happens on Shabbat intentionally, which was Tosfot's take, or yes, make sure Asher has. Here you go. The packet. You'll want the
whole thing?
Yeah. Bottom of page 5. I'm giving a recap of what we were doing in this unit, and now we're going to begin from page 5. So the two main views were that one was Tosfot. Tosfot said that if that intention, there's always need of intent. In order to mevatel kli mehechano, there's always that requires intent. You need to intend on the item that becomes Muktze to become Muktze. So if I happen to put a stone on the table on Shabbat, am I allowed to carry the table? If I was sweeping and the stone is in my way, I stuck it on the table, I wasn't thinking about it, right? Then lichora, the table would not be considered Muktze. But if I want to set the stone aside, I put it on the table because I want to keep it for later, then I would not be allowed to carry the table on Shabbos either. So that's Basis Ladavar Asul. If I wasn't thinking about it, I could just turn the table on its side and allow the stone to fall. I can't pick up the stone. I can't lift the stone directly because that's Muktze, but I can make the stone fall like that. But that would be Basis Ladavar Asul. Bitul kli mehechano. Right. Bitul kli mehechano. Here we also had a machloket. The classic case is where I put a dish under a chicken to lay an egg into the dish, and then once the egg is there, I can no longer carry the dish. So Tosfot say this is also intent. So I intended on having this dish cancel, the ability to use this dish canceled on Shabbat because I intended on the egg that is Muktze to fall into this dish. That's
even if the egg doesn't fall into the even if the egg doesn't fall onto the blade itself?
No, it has to happen.
Oh, it has to.
It has to happen. If it doesn't happen, right. Once it happens, right.
Okay. So I thought it would be like a machshava situation.
Right. So the outcome, you need the outcome, but it depends on the machshava. If you didn't intend on it happening, so it's not so right. So according to Tosfot, at least, if I put a dish out for no reason, no specific reason, and the chicken decides to jump on the dish and lay an egg, I can pick the dish up and drop the egg, right? Make the egg drop off the dish, and because I had no intent, right? That's Tosfot's take. Baal HaMaor's take was, if I cannot, if bitul kli mehechano, Basis Ladavar Asul can only be formed at Ben Hashmashot, before Shabbat. There's no such thing as Basis Ladavar Asul starting on Shabbat itself. That's how Baal HaMaor sees it. So what is this bitul kli mehechano lichora? That would mean that any time Muktze ends up reaching a kli on Shabbat, there's no problem with dropping the Muktze off the kli on Shabbat. Right, so this case with the chicken, I put the plate there. If I put the plate on Friday, and the egg is laid before Shabbat, then that would be Basis Ladavar Asul. I wouldn't be allowed to carry the plate either. But it wouldn't be a problem of bitul klei mechana because you're allowed to have muktze before Shabbat.
Yeah.
So in that case, what are we talking about? Why is there a problem to putting the plate on? And if it happens on Shabbat, so it's not basis ledavar asur, I should be able to roll it off too.
Yeah.
So says Baramor, and we saw this more in the Maharich, right? In the Agadosh, in the Maharich, that bitul klei mechana is the technical problem. I can gently pick up the egg and put it somewhere else, but I can't do that on Shabbat. If I try rolling the egg out of the dish, it'll break. So it's a technical problem. If technically your muktze doesn't allow you to carry the dish, that's bitul klei mechana. But it's all a technical issue. As opposed to Tosfot who discussed intent, Balamor was talking about the practicality, practically being able to have to get rid of the muktze, sliding it off. Now let's see Rabbeinu Tam, bottom of page 5, where he says a very big chidush that bitul klei mechana. Sorry, basis ledavar asur. Back to basis ledavar asur. I said before the basis ledavar asur depends on intent. Now Rabbeinu Tam takes this to a new extreme and says intent to what? And this goes back to why is there bitul klei? Why is there basis ledavar asur? I keep on saying the other one. Why is there basis ledavar asur? Why does it become muktze? So I put money on my desk, and now I can no longer carry the desk. Why not? Right, with intent. Why can't I carry the desk now? So drop the money off and carry the desk. Why is that? So Rabbeinu Tam understands that I am aware of the fact that if I put muktze somewhere, I can no longer carry that item that's under it. So I, in my mind, was muktze the item. What? I know the halacha, and I know that if I put the money there, so that's where the money's going to stay. If that's where the money's going to stay, so I've foregone the ability to use this item on Shabbat. Mimele, it's muktze midati, right? Now, so Rabbeinu Tam says that's true if you really have given up the use of this thing before Shabbat. But if you intend on using it later on Shabbat, it's okay, just based on the same logic. So let's give the example he gives. לאחר שיצאנו מבית הכנסת, שאלתי את מורי אם יכול לטלטל את הכד, אחר שיתנו ויפול האבן, ושומע דתנן פרק נוטל האבן שעל פי החבית מטה על צידה והיא נופלת מאליה, ואמרו בגמרא, אמר רב הונא אמר רב, לא שונה לו בשכח, אבל מניח נעשה בסיס לדבר האסור, אסור לטלטל אפילו חבית עצמה, אם תיפול ממנו האבן. So right before Shiur, Rabbeinu Tam put a large stone on the barrel so that snakes won't come in, won't go in. All right. What? Sorry? Yeah, it's on the wood that's on the barrel. Yeah, there's a proper Muktze, but they didn't have the same kind of exact abilities that we have to make something that.
It was like an industrial barrel. Probably was a little bit bigger, a little bit smaller.
Or I don't know what industry they had at the time. I don't know if everything right. It was everything was kind of handmade at the time, right? We're talking about 12th century kilo, right? Everything was kind of handmade. So right, so I have a barrel and I have a lid, but the lid doesn't fit properly. The lid is on top, but a snake can crawl in. So you put something heavy. So you put a heavy stone to make it sit deeper, right? Now, once you do that, l'chora, you have a problem because you intended on right before Shabbat. Yes. Yes. Right. He was going to Mincha. Right.
Yeah, this is an issue for sure.
So l'chora, this would be basis ledavar asur because he intended on the stone being there. Right? Should be a classic situation of basis ledavar asur. As we said, depends on intent. That before Shabbat, everyone agrees depends on intent.
But isn't this specifically for a specific action on Shabbat? It's like just to clarify, a stone that's on top of a barrel.
Yeah.
Right? Preventing snakes from getting into the barrel so that you can have that wine on Shabbat. So that So the entire thing isn't necessarily Muktze.
Why?
So we're saying that the.
Wait, but the
stone-
Evan is Muktze.
We're saying that the Evan is Muktze specifically to prevent, this, what the contents in the inside that are not Muktze from. I'm sorry, what?
That's another question, but we'll get back to that
Yeah,
in a
like,
minute.
it could be like either a.
Right. So you're saying like this. On the one hand, I intended on the stone. That's right. On
So
the
the-
one
the-
hand,
the-
I
the-
intended on the stone being there. On the other hand, my intent was that it'll be there so that I could use the barrel on Shabbat.
Yeah.
So which is it? Would that follow the idea of basisa devar asur because I intended on the stone being there, or does that follow the idea of, or do I say no? The whole idea of basisa devar asur is I want to muktze the barrel. Here I'm saying the opposite. I want to use the barrel on Shabbat. So that's exactly what Rabbeinu Tam says. That's exactly what Rabbeinu Tam. ואמר לי רבנו דמותר הואיל ודעתו היה לתלה בשבת משם, תעד אמרין במניח נעשה בסיס לדבר אסור, היינו דין דעתו לתלה. ונחבית שהיינו מסתפקים אלה שנמח בשבת, אבל היכה שבדעתו לתלה מותר. So if you did this explicitly for Shabbat, if you intended on doing this so that the barrel will be clean for the next few hours, that's exactly undermines the whole idea of basis davar asur. That's what Rabbeinu Tam says. I'll just say a word about the question that was raised here. If I have a stone that's designated as a weight to keep the lids down, the stone will no longer be muktze. That becomes my kli. It's no longer muktze. L'chora, why is Rabbeinu Tam not talking about that? So it's a good question. How far do we go with this? Right? In other words, if we have something that I intend, it would seem that the assumption was that he had positive intent to throw it out after.
Throw out the rock?
Yeah.
Okay.
He'll use it now and that's it. The more classic case is the gizet tzedek, right? If I have wool that's not yet properly
hasn't been
processed. Thank you.
Yeah.
Whatever the process is, right?
Yeah.
Now I need something to keep my child warm, so I'm putting it over it, but I don't intend on it staying in that state. So even though I'm using it for that, it could be the specific wool that I'll use from now on forever, and then it would no longer be muktze because that's the kli, that's the final designation.
Yeah.
But if I have a different use for the wool that I want to do after I process it, then it would remain muktze even though I'm using it.
So if it's
Right.
for that designated action, therefore it is not itself, become muktze if it's taken away from
Exactly.
stuck for that use. But if it's taken away and used for something else, like if somebody uses it to, I don't know, you have a rock for another reason, paperweight for a book.
Right. So if I have a paperweight that I regularly use,
yeah,
it'll no longer be muktze.
Yeah.
Right. If I have a paperweight that I'm using just for now, but I intend on throwing it out after,
then it would be
that's right. Now, why did the Talmud not say, "Oh, is that your official designated?"
It could be that was not
stone?
the way that it was done.
Right. Must have been something like that. Otherwise, why did they tell me to assume? Sorry.
Yeah.
Or maybe you just want to learn another halacha.
Yeah.
No, Rabbeinu is Rabbeinu Tam here. Yeah. No, it's Rabbeinu Tam. Who's Rabbeinu Tam? I'm pretty sure it's a Talmud referring to Rabbeinu Tam in the story. That Rabbeinu is Rabbeinu. But let me double check that in terms of.
Is this Shiur being recorded, by the way?
It is.
Oh.
Yeah.
When was there a time?
Yeah, so it's because the Zehora Rabbi Yaakov. Oh, no, I'm wrong. Zehora Rabbi Yaakov Bar Meir.
Okay.
All right, so it's his Rebbe in this case is Rabbi Yaakov Bar Meir. When is Baalat Tosafot? I guess. All right. Balamor disagrees. Let's see Balamor on the next page. Afalpi shekisa b'davar she'no nital notel u'machzir שמנהל הקדרה והכיסוי נופל. ואין אומרים זה נעשה בסיס הדבר האסור לפי שאינו אלא צורך שעה ודעתו היה מאתמול ליטול ממנה בשבת. Sorry, I said הפוך. Sorry, I got mixed up. Balamor agrees with Rabbeinu Tam and says the same thing. Balamor says, talking about my challenge with the wool, with the unprocessed wool, and says, look, you intended on, you say, why are you allowed to move why are you allowed to take the lid off the pot? Why are you allowed to shake it off? Because you intended on doing it before Shabbat, doesn't come with this.
To shake the lid?
Yes, because you can't carry the wool directly.
Oh, okay.
You can only carry it indirectly. So you have to lift the lid and shake it off somewhere else, not into the cholent, preferably.
Oh, okay. So we're acting as if the wool is heichi muktzah, and so we're not allowed to
Right.
move it away.
Well, if
No, the wool is muktzah because you're using it just for the
make the lid, put the
Right.
wool on the.
because now you like to carry the lid.
I thought the wool had a specific function, and that's why it's.
No. We're talking about we're in the unprocessed wool that I intend on processing
Yeah.
later on.
So I thought that
So it
was the
remains
wool that had a
muktzah.
function.
No, that would be muktzah.
Okay.
If I took wool and said designated, this is my cholent covering wool.
Yeah.
It's no longer muktzah. But if I say, all right, quick, the cholent will get cold,
Okay, we're in that
stick some
second
wool on it.
scenario. Okay, so that's the second scenario. So
Yeah.
then you have to shake the lid off away, and you're allowed to put it back on. They're saying you're allowed to put it back on.
Right.
Okay.
The lid remains not muktzah.
Yeah.
Because you intend on knocking the wool off on Shabbat.
Yeah.
The Rashba disagrees. The Rashba tam she'amar she'eno basis ledavar asur mipnei she'eno el letzorach shah אינו מחובר בעיניי, שאסור נר ושמן ופתילה, מפני שנעשו בסיס לדבר האסור. אבי שאין הנר בסיס לכל היום, אלא לצורך מקצת הלילה, שהאדם מצפה מתי תכבה נרו. So, what is the plan? I have a candle. We said, right, the candle, the olden candles, right, which is more like exactly, yeah, that, yes, yeah, right, exactly. So, the Rashba says it becomes muktzah for the whole Shabbat, right? Basis ledavar asur. Now, why is the basis ledavar asur was a bit of a headache? We talked about it in the past, right? Because what is the basis for the flames? It's not so clear, right? It should be clear about isur or whatever mitzvah mius, but that wouldn't be basis. That's a bit of a headache in itself. Assuming that premise, accepting that premise, the question remains: what is the plan? When is the candle going to go out? Is it going to stay on for 25 hours now?
No,
there's no way.
Oil
4 hours, right?
Mhm.
So you know that the flame is going to go out in 4 hours. So why does it remain muktze after? How's that difference as the Rashba from your idea here with the wool? He's attacking Balamor. Balamor says, I have the wool until the next morning, and then I intend on knocking it off. Or I have the wool until my Sidat Leil Shabbat, right?
Yeah.
For the first 2 hours of Shabbos, right? After that, I intend on knocking the wool off. How's that different from the candle that I intend on going out after 4 hours? How's it different?
Because one is
Well, the Rash, so Balamor says, we know the halacha that's explicit is that you're not allowed to carry a candle even after it goes out.
Yeah.
Says the Rashba, in that case, anything that I'm aware of the future change on Shabbat, I shouldn't be allowed to carry either. So Balamor wants to argue, and Rabbeinu Tam too wants to argue, if you intended in advance to make it knock off, right, to make it fall, it should be okay.
Wait, that it extinguishes early?
No, they don't say this about the candle.
Oh, okay.
Because what's the difference in the candle and the case of the wool or the case of the stone?
Yeah.
That's the question.
So the difference between the two different aspects, one being a time-based, it's going to go out at a certain time versus one that's designated for just a like not necessarily so kovea time. Because one of them seems like the wool is like at this certain time is when I'm going to shake it off.
Right.
But the candle, as opposed to, it sounds like it's more time-based because like if you put in a certain amount of oil in there, you know when it's going to go out.
And therefore, which should be easier
so
to.
It would be easier to.
The candle should be easier based on that. No.
Well, we're saying that if it's going to become muktzah at a certain time.
Yeah.
So it sounds like it's harder to designate it for anything else other than that outside of that time frame.
But that's the same thing. It's the same thing as my child that sits in spot until noon. No.
Could be. It could be, but
my cholent pot I leave in my crock pot with the gizet semer on top of it until noon, right?
Yeah.
At noon, I want to move the gizet semer. So I say from noon, it's no longer muktzah. Or I mean, at least the lid is no longer muktzah, right?
The lamp becomes. All right. I'm
right. No. So I think
time thing.
I think right. I think I see your direction. Let's see some of the problem.
Okay.
All right. Now we have a similar idea with the Mishnah. בית שמאי אומרים מגביהין מן השולחן עצמות וקליפין, בית הלל אומרים נוטל את הטבלה כולה מנערה. So I have my peanut shells, right?
Okay.
That I throw on my table. Peanut shells, they're muktze because there's nothing to do with them. They're just shells, right? So I throw them on the table. So Beit Shammai say, yeah, you can also take them off, and Beit Hillel say you can't take them off directly. You have to lift the whole thing and throw them, right, and toss them, right?
Can you like blow them too?
What?
Can you blow them too?
Yeah, but we'll save that for unit 49
Okay.
because that's we're gonna get to that there.
Yeah.
What?
Sounds like willowing.
The kilachar, yeah. So now.
So they
Why am I allowed to carry the whole table?
Because it's indirect, especially when it comes to taking.
But
off
why is the table
shells.
not a basis?
Oh, so that because it's on there?
Yeah,
You would think because it would be on there, so therefore. it would
right. The
be
shells are on
assumed
the.
to-
I
We said we
purposely
can move-
dropped the shells onto the table, so the table should become a basis, right?
We said we can move we said we can move the rock off using tilting by tilting the
But
table.
that's only if I put the rock there without proper intent.
Like even
Here, I
with,
did intent. I
even with
mean,
peanut shells, there also could be the same kind of intent.
well, the assumption is, well, what do you mean?
The
They're
assumption is that you.
just in my way. The stone's in my way. I stuck it here without thinking.
Yeah, that's what we're saying. The peanut shells could also be like
Yeah, you do
pop
realize.
them.
You do realize that there's a reason you put it on the table, not on the floor, right?
Yeah. Well, it's also because you don't want to make a mess.
Of course. So you want the
Yeah.
table to facilitate your.
Oh, so you're saying that because
So that should be a problem. That should be a problem.
because-
So let's see the Rashba.
Okay.
בית הלל אומרים מסלק את הטבלה כולה מנערה, היא כלמד כך מסלק את הטבלה. ואם תאמר האח המניח היו קליפין ועצמות לדעת על השולחן, מניח נעשה בסדר דבר אסור, אסור אפילו לנער, כי דאמרין הטעם בעוד נוטל לא שני אלא בשוכח, אבל מניח נעשה בסדר דבר אסור. So לכאורה, what should be the answer? So he says, לכאורה this would become בסדר דבר אסור. That's what you're saying. תרצו בתוספות, דהת המניח לדעת כל השבת. ככה לא נחם על דעת שיעמדו שם כל השבת, אלא ככה אבל כשוכח. So my intent, when I was dropping the peanut shells onto the table, my intent was that they won't remain to their whole Shabbat, and therefore it's okay. So this works for Tosfot. This is Rabbeinu Tam,
Yeah.
right? It doesn't really work for the Rashba.
or Beis Hillel.
What do you mean? Or Beit Hillel are the ones who
Beit
say
Hillel
lift
is
the
the
whole
same.
table.
Oh, actually.
Oh, the question is why? The question is
Yeah.
why is Beit Hillel? Okay.
Yeah.
You're assuming the Rabbeinu,
Yeah.
you're assuming the Tosfot already.
But also Balam O as well.
So about right, also Balamor, correct? Yeah, also Balamor. So the Rashba says gives a different solution. Next page. עצמות הקליפין דלא חשיבי ואינו מצליחם כלל, לעולם אינם תורת בסיס. על פי שניחם על השולחן כדי שלא יתנף הבית, מכל מקום לא צורך עצמם מניחם שם, לא עצמם חמת חשיבותן, אלא ככה אין הטבלה בסיס להם כלל, אלא מסלק את הטבלה ומנערה. So he basically says the next step past what Asher said. It's the next step. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Right?
Okay.
He says, why is it on the table? Because I want it to not be somewhere else. There's no positive. It's not different from when I'm sweeping the floor and the stone's in my way. I move to the side. I'm not thinking of where I'm putting it.
Yeah.
So here too, the question was, is there intent in my putting it on the table, not on the floor? Fair question. It's fair enough. But it's not positive enough.
Mhm.
I want to not reach the floor.
Yeah.
So why?
Like if there was a garbage can.
No,
right
it was
there,
I'm cracking the shell. Now that that's in my hand. What do I do with it?
like if somebody
drop
had a
it.
garbage
Why?
can right there, it'd be thrown out.
Right, exactly.
Like that's what we're saying. It's
Right.
Like,
That's
if
my
that was-
right.
Like that would be the situation. It's like this. It's not necessarily the table is just like the garbage.
The question is what is positive intent? We're going to go deeper into that in the next unit. We're going to go deeper into what is positive intent. But for the moment, I'm only doing this to What?
That's the next unit. It's positive
What?
intent. I'd say that whenever you put something on a basis in order to make it.
Like you're saying, like would there ever be a time where somebody would purposely take something that's Muktze, put it on the table?
are you? No, he's talking about the awareness. He's saying what do you mean by he says?
Everyone. Yeah.
Rafi's saying define intent
Everyone again.
because
Oh, you don't-
no.
you
So
don't
no.
like
So the answer. So the answer is you need some place to keep your money, right? You don't trust the banks.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you put your money in a certain drawer. So there's a positive intent on having the money in the drawer.
Correct.
That's okay. That would be basis of asur.
That would make it.
That would make it basis of asur, yes. So I see the difference.
Also, other than money, you're struggling to find things that are like a
No, our problem.
other than money. So most books are saying not Hashibah.
It's like
No, but again,
Kitchen
the point here isn't that it's expensive or that it's useful. The point is, right, the positive one is if I put the stone aside and say, this is a good shaped stone, a good shaped stone,
Yeah.
right?
This bone is good to go.
Or
Right, no,
stick, stick would be really good for the bonfire, you know?
Right, exactly. There's a good piece of wood. Let's keep it in a place where I'll remember
Yeah.
to use it in my mangal tomorrow.
Or like, something you use, like a kitchen utensil in the kitchen that you can't use on Shabbat, like a salt shaker, like those grinding salt shakers. Right. It's like that's just hanging around.
We'll have to, yeah. Look, part of our problem. Yeah.
Oh, is that-
Part of the problem, more generally, we have a general problem. It's funny, I was just talking to another Rav here just before I told the meeting I had just before the Azkara. And we were saying one of the problems we were talking about Muktze and like how he teaches Muktze. We were saying part of the problem is that we don't have much Muktze around us regularly. And what in this room is Muktze? Look around. What in this room is Muktze? What? So the plant. No, it's Krim Shabbat Yisur.
Oh, really?
Maybe Muktze Chalson Keys. Oh,
Okay.
but I'm thinking Pseder. But yeah, I know my computer. I don't take it seriously. But I throw it around.
Good
But
point. I didn't even think of that.
it means like what is actually Muktze? So I end up, potatoes, raw chicken, money, zero. Like that's basically it. Whatever pasta, whatever. I'm saying that, but you have to talk about food or money, like uncooked food, unprepared food. But it's not in our houses.
My roommate has sweet
Proper British
potatoes in
children.
a bowl. My roommate has sweet potatoes in a bowl, and
But-
we have to move it away from the table because it actually, that's the thing.
We'll go
That
to
could actually
feed.
be-
To seed.
No, it's just like sweet potatoes, just in a bowl, just like random 2 sweet potatoes.
Oh, just
in an
because he
actual
likes the
bowl.
look.
He likes the look, but also
Likes the look,
he keeps
okay.
it there to store it. in
Right.
temperature.
So raw sweet
that's
potato. Okay,
straight up
beseder.
Muktze.
Yeah. So that's Muktze, right? And then that bowl will be a beseder l'vasar, correct? So that's
Yeah.
I'm saying we have to go pretty far to find like good examples. In
And
the
it's also not what people call
that's another problem.
Yeah.
food.
But the point is, we're gonna have to define what intent is. I only brought the Rashba in the context of his disagreeing with Tosfot. Tosfot say if I intend on moving it away later on, so you see what happened. There's a kind of opposites, the Rashba and the Tosfot here. The Tosfot say intent doesn't need to be so positive. I don't want to fall on the floor, so I put it on the table. That's called intent.
Yeah.
But it's not because I intend on moving it from there. So that saves us, right? That's what is the positive intent required? Just I need it to be here, right? If I need it to be here, if I say I need to be here for the time being, that saves it. The Rashba says I need to have need for this. It's not enough, right? So to create the basis, Tosfot have a very low bar of what is intent, but to remove it, it's also a low bar and say, well, I only want it here now, not for later. As opposed to the Rashba says your intent on making it only for the time being, that's irrelevant. The question is, what do you want now? What you want now has to be there's quite a high bar too. I need this item later. But the point isn't that it's very expensive. The point is there use, right? Now, the Rashba suggests another answer. ואינתנן מסלק את הטבלה כולם נערה ואינו נעשה במתורת בסיס, אף שהוא מניח מידה לגבי הטבלה, כיוון דממצא שבת ובדעתו לסלקן לא עובד בסיס. Meaning, he does accept Tosfot's idea of דעתו לסלקן if it happens on Shabbat.
What?
Like this. Rashba says there are 2 kinds of basis l'davar asur. That's what the Rashba say.
Okay.
Saying there's basis l'davar asur that happens ben hashmashot, and then intent will not help you.
Okay.
So the intent to move it away later on will not be relevant, will not help you.
Okay.
That's one kind of basila. There's a basis l'davar asur that's created on Shabbat, and then since it happens on Shabbat, you have to have the intention of leaving it there till the end of Shabbat.
That explains, I think that explains the light, the candle too. Like
The candle.
the intent of it being.
Oh, you know, right. But the Rashba is easier to explain with the candle because the Rashba disagrees, right? The question is how do Tosfot and Baal HaMaor explain the candle?
Yeah.
That's the question.
Okay, so the Rosh was saying that there are two different parts of basis. With the first one is Ben Hashmashot before Shabbat, and then on Shabbat.
Right. So have a look at the table at the bottom of the page. I think it's helpful. Why?
Perfect.
Yeah, right. So Baal HaMaor says that. So there are two questions here, right? Does the basis does it become a basis if you intend on moving it later on? So Baal HaMaor and Tosfot, they both say no, right? If it's there and you intend on moving it on Shabbat, so it's fine. Now the other question is, could a basis be created in the middle of Shabbat? We learned in the past that Baal HaMaor says no such thing. There's no basis of asur. Basis of asur is only before Shabbat. The most you'll have on Shabbat will only be bitul kli mechano. So, Tosfot on the other hand say basis could be created on Shabbat. The Rashba plays with both of these together and says if it happened before Shabbat, then making it only over a certain time frame is not helpful.
Yeah.
So,
Okay.
But if it happened on Shabbat, so both of these together, happening on Shabbat, together with the intent of moving it before the end of Shabbat, means it won't be basis l'davar asur. So,
The notzal be'emtza Shabbat, meaning that it's
created.
that this is created. So that's behemshech Shabbat. So that means that it's before Shabbat, and then the Rashba is saying that it's good, but it's only good for if it's removed in the middle of Shabbat.
Right.
That's what he's saying.
If you intend on moving it in the middle
Oh,
of
you
Shabbat.
intend on moving it. So then that's so
Then it
yeah,
will become a
with that-
basis unless you intend on moving it later on Shabbat, right?
Okay.
Basis. Okay, let's get back to the question about the candle. We haven't answered that question properly yet, so skip to the Rashba in the middle of page 8, where the Rashba himself says, all right, I understand that I'm up against many Rishonim, so I'm going to try to answer this question myself. And he says, "Mipnei adchak yesh li lomar lehamid deshani ner de'af al gav dederko lichbot be'emtza Shabbat kivan sheino masur beyado de'ino yoda im matai tichbe nero ואפילו נצרך לו, אינו יכול לכבותו ולא נערו כדי שיכבה, ואינו יכול להשתמש בו, אלא צריך לשב ולצפות עד שיכבה מאליו, בחייו וכמוקצה לכולי שבת." So what happens is this: I put the wool on my cholent, right? Until when?
Afternoon, whatever.
Right? Noon. Fine. Fair enough. Now, Elamai, a bunch of people come and they're, steiging at our house, and I say, midnight cholent. Can I do that? Why?
I was gonna ask about the midnight challenge.
Oh, right.
Shake it up, but you're saying.
Well, I can't put it back, but that's my problem. But am I allowed to shake it off?
Wait, what's the question?
The question is, I said in advance. I put the wool, why do I keep on forgetting the word?
The unprocessed wool.
Unprocessed. I don't know why it's
one of those things.
one of those things. Anyway, why?
I think it's a better way.
Better word.
Raw wool.
Whatever. Yeah, I've said it. I have unprocessed wool. I put that on my cholent until noon. Right? Okay. So then I change my mind and I say midnight cholent. I want to take it off now.
Oh, early.
Yeah, 12 hours earlier.
Okay.
What do I do with that? Is that okay? Do I say, so there's a certain time frame? So the Rashba says it does work, right? In other words, the Rashba says Rabbeinu Tam and the Baal HaMaor will say it does work, right? Which means that you're in control, right? If you're in control, that means that your choice, you're only leaving that unprocessed wool there as long as you want.
Okay.
So it never properly becomes Muktze. At any point, I can stop this Muktze. I want to go back to the core idea. What is the idea of Basis HaDavar Asur? I have Muktze. I place the Muktze there. I wittingly place the Muktze there. So I'm aware that now I won't be able to carry this the whole Shabbat. Now, if I say I intend on moving this later, when? Well, l'chora noon tomorrow, but maybe early. I'm in full control throughout. From the first second Shabbat starts, I'm already in control. I can choose whenever I want. I can stop whenever I want. I could, right? I can stop the Muktze whenever I want. But the candle, I don't have that control. I'm stuck for 4 hours. There's nothing I can do about it, right? So the idea is, if it becomes truly Muktze in the sense that I can't control it, even for 1 minute during Shabbat, that's a basis of davar asur. But if when Shabbat starts, I say, I intend on moving this, now I have a specific time I want to move it, but I could move it from now, then does it become a basis? Why? Same idea. The whole idea of the Muktze is, I put, just like Rafi said, what, does anyone really put his money there saying, okay, now I want to Muktze this drawer? No one thinks that, but they do want the money there.
Yeah.
I say, well, you realize the price. The price is you won't be able to open the drawer. And you say, yeah, but I need the money to be somewhere safe. Right? So you're not be allowed to open the drawer, yes.
Oh.
Yes. But
There's nothing else in it.
but I'm saying fundamental level, right? What you say, beseder, this is my basis. Fine, I'll accept that, right?
So when it comes to, but in this case, with the candle, then it's not much you can control about
since I'm not in control,
the object itself.
Right, exactly. The whole idea of the ability to change the basis hadavar asur is only because I could change it whenever I want. So when Shabbat starts already, I say I remain in control of this. I'm not foregoing the ability to use this on Shabbat. I'm still in control. As opposed to the candle, I'm not.
So you're changing the status of the object itself from useful
Correct.
to not useful.
Correct, exactly.
So-
And that's also.
So yeah, that's what we're saying here. So it
Right.
would be
So even though I know that at 11 the candle will go out, it's not helpful because until 11 I can't change it. I can't do anything about it. So
and even so, it's even a salt to add to it anyway. So you can't even extend it.
sorry.
I'm just saying, like, according to the Mishnah, like you can't even extend it afterwards.
Right.
Yeah.
Now I just want to point out the Pri Megadim says the sound similar, but it's a bit different. So the Pri Megadim ישנו בכיסוי אבן לא שייך לקצה בין השמשות. דיבה מנהל בין השמשות, מה שאין כן בנר לא שייך זה, צריך בלילה נר שבת חובה, ושפיר את קצה לכל היומה. He says like this.
Oh.
I could choose, it's not just a matter of my control, it's also a matter of my need, my necessity. There are things that I need them to be there. Now, my problem here is that how far do you go with this? What about the Gizet Seven? Say you could eat your child cold. Yeah, I don't want to, right? Will you say the same there? You see my problem?
He says again that just then again what he means about needing some benefit.
He's saying let's take Rabbi Yotam's case. So Rabbi Yotam's case, if I'm told, oh, you won't be able to use this later, I can say, oh, fine, so I could shake it off. I could shake the stone off now. It won't protect your beseder. As opposed to the candle, you need the candle to be there.
Yeah. But we're also saying with the semer also, like with the wool, it doesn't necessarily have to be there. That's the question you just
Right. No, usually the fool.
Why does the
No, you
I
don't
need it.
You
I
don't
need
necessarily-
I need
you
it
need
there.
it, but
I need it there. I put it there actively.
Yeah.
It's not a passive thing.
I thought you were
That's why
saying
it's
like
not
you don't necessarily need-
so clear to me. It's not so clear to me how this works.
When you're saying that something like for this Cholent case, you're saying that
Mhm.
somebody, you don't necessarily need to have it. It's not as important as saying a candle,
Right.
right? But it's still, there's a level of oneg Shabbat that still needs to be there.
Right, exactly. That's my problem.
Like, so that's the oneg Shabbat is having like the hot foods on Shabbat, regardless of.
Yeah, so I agree, but let's see how the post can actually bring this. So first of all, the Bura Halacha does say what the Rashba says. The Torah Shabbat, that's in the seeps down to the Bura Halacha. רבינו תם הארי בדעתו לסלק האיסור מעל הבסיס בשבת, ולכן הוא מתבטל הבסיס לגבי, מה שאין כן בזה, שאין דעתו כלל לסלק עד שיכבה. מילא נעשית המנורה בסיס לנר מתחילת השבת. Meaning, I'm not in control. I'm not the one who's going to blow this out later.
Yeah.
Right? It's going to happen on its own. But right? Let's see the Shulchan Aruch.
It's the same as the Rashba.
Yeah, he's same. I think he's somewhere around to the Rashba, but you can see in the Shashar Kil Chata, you're going to see the Pri Megadim come out as well. So see the Shulchan Aruch first. Shachach even al pi chavit, o ma'ot al akal, mate chavit al tzida ve'even nofelet, mnei rakar ve'ma'ot noflim. אם הייתה חבית בין חביות, בעניין שאינו יכול להטות אותה במקומה, so you have to carry the barrel out and drop the stone off somewhere else, יכול להגביה כמו שהיא, מאבן למקום אחר להטות אותה, שם כדי שיפול מעליה. ניחם עליו מדעתו, על דעת שישארו שם בכניסת שבת, אסור להטות ולנער. יש אומרים, this is the important line for us, ואפילו ניחם שם על דעת שישארו שם בכניסת השבת, כדי שיתלם בשבת, מותר להטות ולנער בשבת. So because כדי שיתלם בשבת, because you intended on removing it on Shabbat. So I intended on having the stone there now, I intended on moving it later on. ולא אסור במניחם על דעת שישארו שם כל השבת, this is a very clear reflection of Tosfot. Of Rabbeinu Tam, right? That if I intended on removing the stone on Shabbat, it doesn't become a basis of the Asur.
That's the same thing. It sounds like the same thing.
It's Rabbeinu Tam.
Yeah, it sounds like the
No.
same thing as Rashba also.
No,
You have
Rashba.
Rashba, right?
No, the Rashba there, don't confuse the Rashba at the beginning, at the top of this page, is only answering his question on Rabbeinu Tam. He disagrees, right?
Okay.
That's right. I emphasized it before, but not clearly enough. That the Rashba doesn't agree, doesn't accept Rabbeinu Tam. He just says, well, I'm kind of, I have no better answer, but Rabbeinu Tam needs some about a more, they need to make some kind of sense. So, l'chor, this is what they're thinking. They're wrong, but there is what they're thinking. But seeing the Shema Shalakil Chatan.
What going to be much about is like the kippur, right?
Sorry?
The kippur. That was an example of something you're planning to do for Shabbat. Like
Well, all these kids, the Klipot, the Gizei Tzemer, all those things.
Yeah, Ben too.
just not the case.
Yeah.
So
Right. See the Shema Shalakil Chatan. במקום הפסד, יש לעכב ולסמוך על דעת המקלים. גם אם הניח את המוקצה על הדבר המותר, על דעת להשאירו שם בכניסת השבת, אלא שכוונתו הייתה שהוא ינערו במשך השבת, או נוכרי ייקחנו. And the Harai says, לאו דווקא כוונתו הייתה בהדיא לכך, אלא הדין לדבר שדרכו בכך, if that's the normal use. אם כל כוונתו היא לא לסלק את האיסור בין היתר, עד שהאיסור יסתלק מאליו, אפילו יודע בבירור שהאיסור יסתלק ממנו במשך השבת, וכולי עלמא, אמרין בין מיגוד יתקצאי, meaning, if the Muktze will end up not being there later on, not based on your control, it doesn't work. Right? Why is he saying that? To cover the case of the Ner.
The light, we're saying that the light won't be there,
Right.
which is the main point for the candle being
Right.
there. So therefore, since that won't be there, this makes it, let's see something else. Okay.
וכן, היכי שאי אפשר לנר את האיסור מהיתר במשך כל בין השמשות, בכל אלה אמרין מיגוד יתקצאי. Right, this is the Pri Megadim. The Pri Megadim says, if you can't rid yourself of it when Shabbat starts, then you say Migudit Katzai.